Well, guys, we are back. That'd be me, Captain Foley.
And me, Commander Cockins.
And it's time for another Trekyards Rewind, where we take a ship we've already covered very early on, third episode in fact, and give the episode a makeover, a remaster, if you will.
We've learned a lot since those very, very early days. What better way to show that than go back and improve a iconic, more than just favourite, I think, episode with the script tweaks, additional facts, new animations, and renders, of course, this even better team. Both Stuart and myself have got far more confident and developed our own presentation styles to the point where I think you guys are going to see the difference and just enjoy this one a lot more.
That's right. Some of those earlier episodes, for me at least, are rather cringe-worthy to go back and rewatch. But anyway, let's slap on a new coat of paint and repackage a classic. Plus, all the newer viewers and subscribers to the channel might not have seen all those early episodes as of yet, so this will work for them as well.
So sit back, relax, as we take a polished look at the red shirt, the Federation fleet, the Miranda class, as first seen in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
That's right, the Miranda class. Was composed of a single primary hull consisting of a saucer that was similar to that of the Constitution class. However, the bridge module, positioned at the top and center, was shaped differently than the Constitution class module, and also the rear of the saucer was added to, allowing for more internal volume, essentially making up for the lack of secondary hull space. This, of course, is the Eaglemoss XL Reliant.
Standard.
This episode is sponsored by Eaglemoss, and we'll actually talk a little bit more about this at the end of the episode, so look forward to that.
Alright, so, as you might have noticed, pretty obvious, mounted on the underside of the primary hull were its two pylons connected to the warp nacelles. Although these units were visually identical to the nacelles used on the Constitution class, the attachment points were swapped, giving them Miranda's new underslung design. Radical for the time, I think it's fair to say.
Oh, absolutely. Unless it was done like this, which it was originally supposed to be.
Yes.
The ship type or class was listed as a light cruiser, but also referred to as a science vessel, escort ship, or supply ship.
Or just like workhorse ship.
Workhorse, red shirt, it's all interchangeable. The ship was 233 meters in length, had a height of 67.8 meters, and a width of 141.7 meters. It sported 9 decks and carried a standard crew of around 220 personnel. This was, of course, dependent on the variant type and mission profile, however. Emergency evacuation limit was listed as 500 personnel.
Design features of the primary hull included a docking port located on the forward section of the ship, and the aft section, which included 2 shuttle bays, separated by the vessel's impulse engines. These shuttle bays were clearly numbered 1, being on the rear port side, and 2 on the rear starboard side.
As you can see.
Nice and easy for travel.
The most common Miranda-class design included a superstructure or roll bar right above the primary hull and near the very rear of the ship. And this was actually an extension of the dorsal and ventral nacelle pylons. This superstructure was equipped with torpedo launchers and phaser banks, although these side-mounted phasers were actually referred to as mega phasers in the original Avenger-style blueprints and were supposedly very powerful when compared to standard phaser banks.
There are at least 5 different variants of this design, including the Soyuz, Avenger, and other unnamed variants. Each utilised the Miranda basic superstructure, but some configurations lacked the roll bar, with others adding 2 large sensor pods affixed on the port side and starboard sides of the primary hull. In yet more configurations, there was a single pod, or in others, none at all. Very varied. Or just, is this the most kit bash ship of the fleet, but making sense kit bash?
Probably, yeah. Standard cruising speed for the Miranda was warp 7, TOS warp scale, of course.
Of course.
With a maximum speed of warp 9.2 for up to 12 hours. With the introduction of the prototype in 2261, these vessels very quickly became the prominent workhorses of the fleet and were in fact refit and upgraded to still be in service well into the late 24th century.
The first of these refits took place in 2276. These refitted systems were developed side by side with the Constitution class's new development project, utilising many of the same components. By late 2373, many Miranda-class ships were still in active service and had undergone upgrades to their warp nacelles and in some cases their impulse engines, along with other systems as needed to keep active in the fleet.
Sometimes these were referred to as Class 6 supply ships, and while resupply or scientific missions were what they were assigned to, their primary assignments within the fleet were border patrol and escort duties of larger ships. The ships were very effective in an offensive capacity as they were heavily armed. This, however, often resulted in them leading the charge and taking a great many losses, as we mentioned earlier, the red shirts of the fleet.
Standard to all variants were 6 dual-mounted phaser banks located on the primary hull, 3 mounted to the top and 3 on the bottom of the saucer. Also standard were 2 single phaser emitters mounted just beneath the impulse engines. In those variants possessing the roll bar, that superstructure contained 2 tubular phaser emitters on each side, as Jim mentioned earlier, classed as megaphasers that could be fired both forward and to the ship's flank. Actually a very useful tactical tool, as that was pretty... Well, it very obviously mimicked the torpedoes and was very effective.
These megaphasers drew their power directly from the warp plasma feeds running into the 2 nacelles, making them very formidable weapons. There were also 2 forward and 2 aft photon torpedo launchers housed in the pod, mounted in the center of the superstructure.
It is worth noting that already it's now more offensively capable than the Constitution-class heavy cruiser. Just something to note there. Our torpedoes.
Well, that goes back to the original design of the Avenger class, kind of a heavy destroyer. Yeah. By the 24th century, a number of modifications were made to the Miranda class weapon systems. Some Miranda class vessels, such as those of the twin pod variant, included a phaser array mounted on the lower part of the ventral dome and photon torpedo launchers in the main part of the ship rather than the pod and the roll bar.
A majority of the 24th century Miranda-class vessels of the roll bar variant, particularly during the Dominion War, were equipped with phaser arrays and photon torpedoes equivalent to those used on other standard ships of the era, while keeping the same weapons array placement as 23rd century Miranda. It's worth noting that because only a single variant of the Miranda-class 3D model was made for DS9, only the roll bar variant was ever seen. This is potentially in canon because this was the most well-armed variant, and as such was most useful in the battles that we see in DS9.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And all the other ones that were variants were all killed off in TNG, where the Enterprise had to go investigate.
Or just refit into the roll bars.
Yeah. Initially called the Avenger class in non-canon sources and designed more of a tactical destroyer than a light cruiser, it later officially became the Miranda class after the art department working on TNG started referring to it as such. This class was named for Prospero's daughter, a character in William Shakespeare's last play, The Tempest.
The Miranda class was in service for at least 111 years, which makes the Enterprise being 20, actually 40 years old, look a little bit silly for decommissioning. Anyway, with the registry of the Reliant actually appearing on the list of starships in Court Martial from TOS, which was seen in 2067, and then later, its last appearance, an unnamed Miranda class appeared in the group of vessels in Endgame in 2378. So, long legacy there.
Yeah, indeed. A cool little ship for sure, and very versatile. Like, it was cool seeing it in Deep Space Nine, but they really didn't treat that model well. You know what I mean? They say it was the front line because it was so heavily armed, but when you think about like Galaxy class ships and I don't know if I buy it so much.
I think it's if you give the torpedo pod equivalent torpedoes of say Galaxy or a Defiant.
Quantum torpedoes?
I mean, Quantum would be a much better example, yeah. And then having such a fast, maneuverable torpedo boat is a good thing, but we saw it get wiped out in one or so hit. I mean, the Galaxies really seem to survive. But I think it's also because, the 3D background was that there's different levels of quality for the different models in the DS9 battles. The ILM models from First Contact, the Akira, the Sabre, Steamrunner, and Norway, only the Akira was anything that was actually very high quality. And even if you look at the scenes in DS9, if you look carefully, the other ones are in the backgrounds to make up space but not truly be used. Whereas the Excelsior was a better model but not completely accurate. But the Miranda, actually quite a high-end model for its time. That's also probably why it could be seen up close. Because if you think about the Defiant, small ship, so being able to put a smaller, high-detail ship next to it, easier than a larger Excelsior with a smaller Defiant. So it's probably multiple reasons. Again, they couldn't just use a Sabre, which would be a good comparative scale ship, such a low poly model, and you've got Mirandas, which are also fan favourites. So lots of reasons, and that's why they all get killed.
So you think if they ever get around to actually remastering Deep Space Nine, that some of these battles are going to have like Steamrunners or Norway classes taking the brunt of the assaults, than more so than Miranda classes? I mean, they'll have a few for sure.
Well,
but
I mean, then you ask the question of, TOS, is it okay to swap the design of a ship with a completely different design that's just upgraded? It's not literally what it was before. But yeah, I could see them being just a bit more variety, especially since you should theoretically add the, New Orleans and other ships like that from the graveyard fleet in Wolf 359. They would be nice to see in the background too, as well as, the Sovereign would be nice to see. So certainly those fleet battles could be made even bigger with more variety, although they did a great job at the time. I want to ask you though, Stuart, so we didn't mention it much as a behind the scenes fact, but obviously it was intended to be this way around, and we're showing the concept sketch now. Do you wish it had been that originally? Would that have tickled your fancy a bit more, keeping the consistent top mounted nacelles, but changing design overall?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say what I would think about that, because it does look cool. Like, you can see some very great prospects there, but considering that it was approved upside down, that's the whole story of why it looked like that, plus to differentiate it from the Enterprise that had the engines up. I do like them down. I really do. It just adds variety to the fleet, and different versions of it online that have incorporated that, and it's a very cool looking design. So I don't know if I would have wanted it more so that way. I don't know. It's hard to say at this point.
I think it's more swooping in the shots to have it that way around. It just has a certain flow to it, although it would have been nice to see a CG kit bash of like this version somewhere in DS9. It would have been an obvious little variant to make. I mean, seriously, not sure why they didn't. Yeah, I think it was a happy accident, and it is iconic to that movie, and the fact that it lasted all the way. One of the continuously reused molds in TNG and then DS9. It was cool for a reason, and I think this is a great example of, just like with Star Trek 3, how do you reinvent the wheel with the next sort of Enterprise style big ship? How do you reinvent the Federation ship with only the Enterprise, the Constitution class as a baseline? This is a kit bash, but a clever, different enough. I mean, it's same components, but 40% different in terms of structure. Look at the saucer and such, but really it's only 50-50 the same ship as the Enterprise. So it's a kit bash, but a pretty heftily redesigned one. So I think it's wins a place there.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Now, we've been holding these Eaglemoss models the whole time as well. He's got the small one. This is the XL. And if you hold yours up, if you hold yours up to the camera, your registry is very readable. You can see USS Reliant on there. This one has it, but they didn't do the... Up close you can see it, but from like here you can't, which is one of the only flaws with this thing. Other than that, it's pretty good. I've done a review on it. If you want to go check out my Eaglemoss XL Reliant review, which I do Eaglemoss reviews every Friday, you might be interested in these. So by all means, there's a link in the description below. Click it, head on over to Eaglemoss, and pick yourself up some stuff. Use the discount code Trekyards when you check out. Save some money.
And the small one, pretty damn good for its size. It's missing lots of little teeny details, but they would be pretty impractical in a ship this scale. But yeah, no, wonderful model, and Fabio did a great job building it for the Eaglemoss team, and you can see, nice renders in the magazines and such. So yeah, check it out, get it. I mean, why wouldn't you want a Miranda in your collection? It is one of the most iconic secondary ships, and I think it was a great counterbalance to the Enterprise in Star Trek 2.
Absolutely. So anyway, guys, I think that's it for this episode. If you have any additional facts or any comments you want to put down below, please do so. We always look forward to reading them and engaging with the other viewers.
And if you designed the Miranda class, let us know in the comments below. Just saying. We'd love to talk to you about it.
That's right. So until next time, guys, click that like button, subscribe, do all the normal stuff you need to do. Check us out on social media. All the links to all the relative stuff is in the description, including Eaglemoss. Head on over there and check out their stuff as well. And
if you want to directly support us, because we do stuff like this with those, the new 1080p style, the high quality renders, the high quality, improved script, all this stuff. It takes funding, it takes support from you guys, not just passive views on YouTube, which obviously helps. So please do share, like, and subscribe. But do support us on Patreon, which YouTubers like us really rely on to keep the bills paid and lights on, and there's even more lights than we had a couple of years ago, because we've improved since then, you can see. So support us on Patreon if you can, or a one-time donation, a thank you, a tip, we call it, at Trekyards at trekyards.com. There you go. Donate button, give whatever you want, that goes in towards show production costs, or join our regular live streams where we talk to the amazing fan base out there about ships, stations, breaking news, old episodes, all the great Trek stuff, and you can super chat there, which again supports the channel hugely. So And Everpress, we have stores as well. So many ways to help and get something cool as well. Lots of ways, lots of support, and lots more Trekyards to come. So thanks so much in advance, and have a great rest of your day, I guess.
That's right. So until next time, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Commander Coggins.
See you soon, guys.
Bye, guys.